Today is Thursday, January 6th. We'll tell you where the federal investigations stand 1 year after a violent riot at the U.S. Capitol. Also, history is being rewritten. The famous Plessy versus Ferguson case was just revisited more than 125 years later. Plus, the next big winter storm impacting a third of all Americans. How TikTok is moving beyond smartphones and onto bigger screens. And where it's going to be tough to find a home this year, we'll break down the hottest housing markets of 2022. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Today marks exactly 1 year since the U.S. Capitol building was invaded and overrun by thousands of rioters. Remember, it all started with what was supposed to be a peaceful rally, where then-President Trump and his allies spoke to supporters. But crowds from that rally forced their way past police officers and broke into the Capitol. This all happened just as Congress was certifying current President Biden's victory. A year later, the White House says President Biden will speak to Americans about what happened that day and put the blame on former President Trump. That is not a new idea since Trump was impeached for inciting the violence. But remember, the Senate later said he was not guilty. Both Biden and Vice President Harris are set to speak at the Capitol this morning. Former President Trump had originally planned on holding a news conference today as well, but he ended up canceling, saying he would air his grievances at a rally later this month instead. The top Republican in the House, Congressman Kevin McCarthy, wrote in a letter this week that the, quote, actions of that day were lawless and as wrong as can be. But he also slammed Democrats, saying they're using the day as a so-called political weapon to further divide our country. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is still focused on holding the Capitol rioters accountable. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland promised, quote, the actions we have taken thus far will not be our last. Garland said anyone who is involved will be brought to justice, no matter how long it takes. So far, at least 725 people have been arrested in connection to the riot. They face charges ranging from trespassing to assaulting police officers. But the FBI still wants to identify and arrest hundreds more, including the person who placed pipe bombs outside the Democratic and Republican National Committee headquarters. This is considered one of the FBI's largest, most complex investigations in history. Separately, House lawmakers are doing their own investigation. To be continued. Philadelphia's mayor called it one of the most tragic days in our city's history. A catastrophic fire tore through a Philadelphia home, killing 12 people, including 8 kids. It's one of the nation's deadliest residential fires in decades. Authorities have not identified the victims yet, but they lived in the top unit of a 3-story home where at least 4 smoke detectors were not working. Although housing officials say the building was last inspected less than a year ago and the smoke detectors were working fine then, so it's not clear what happened. Now investigators are trying to figure out how the fire started and how it moved so quickly. The city council president says he's been getting tons of phone calls from people who want to help the survivors with necessities like clothes and toiletries, and also with mental health care. At least 8 historically black colleges and universities were targeted this week. Each one of them received bomb threats all on the same day. The campuses were forced to lock down or evacuate, but thankfully no bombs were actually found. And all the schools have since sent out the all clear, so students and staff can return today. Law enforcement is still investigating, but for now, the Washington Post reports it's not clear if the threats were connected or racially motivated. Nationally, federal data shows the number of bomb threats has gone down in the past 2 years, but the number of actual bombings has gone up, so schools are forced to take every threat seriously. It's been more than 125 years since the historic Plessy versus Ferguson case reached the Supreme Court, and now Louisiana's governor is hoping to undo some of the damage. In case you're not familiar, Homer Plessy was a black man charged with boarding a whites-only train car in Louisiana, which was against state law at the time. His lawyers argued the law was unconstitutional, so they filed a petition against the judge in Plessy's case, John Ferguson. Well, the Supreme Court ended up ruling against Plessy, and that ruling cemented America's separate but equal segregation law for more than half a century. Well, fast forward to 2022, and Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards just decided to pardon Homer Plessy, saying, this is a day that should have never had to happen. Plessy died nearly a century ago, but his relatives showed up for a ceremony yesterday. One of them was so happy, he said, quote, I feel like my feet are not touching the ground today because the ancestors are carrying me. Well, here we go again. More than 100 million Americans across 38 states are now under winter weather alerts. Today and tomorrow, 2 storm systems are expected to bring heavy snow, brutally cold temperatures, gusty winds, and icy roads. The National Weather Service issued advisories, watches, and warnings from Washington state to New York. Today, the worst of it is going to be in the middle of the country. Temperatures are taking a nosedive in the northern plains. Wind chills will range from minus 25 to minus 35 degrees. Another storm system is bringing freezing rain and snow to parts of Tennessee and Kentucky, and by tonight, it's expected to bring snow into the mid-Atlantic like the Carolinas and Virginia. Then, by tomorrow's morning rush hour, the winter blast is expected to hit big cities in the Northeast, like Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston. But this thing is moving quickly, so meteorologists say all snow will be off the coast of New England by tomorrow afternoon. Stay tuned. More news coming up, but first, a message from our sponsor. As my husband and I think about what we want for this new year, we discuss things that help make our lives easier and better, and that contribute to our personal growth. Now that we have a child, we think about the same things for him. That's why we love knowing we're getting KiwiCo crates this year. They make it easy on us as parents since these are expert-chosen, high-quality toys and projects that arrive at our doorstep. No research or shopping required on our part. And most importantly, we love what KiwiCo's crates offer for our son's development. They're perfectly made for his age group. He's still a baby, but KiwiCo has something for all ages. And older kids especially will get super cool hands-on science, art, and geography projects that will encourage them to be innovators and creative thinkers. Redefine learning with play. Explore hands-on projects that build confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills all year long. And right now, you can get 50% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line with code NEWSWORTHY at KiwiCo.com. That's 50% off your first month at KIWICO, KiwiCo.com with the promo code NEWSWORTHY. Automakers unveiled some new electric cars and trucks at the world's largest tech show. At CES in Las Vegas, Chevy showcased an electric version of its full-size Silverado pickup, promising a range of more than 400 miles. It says it'll be able to charge 100 miles worth in just 10 minutes. Chevy's owner, GM, says it'll build two models of the electric truck. One is a basic work truck costing $40,000. The other, the RST, is a fully loaded luxury model with a price tag of $105,000. The maker of the PlayStation says it too wants to start selling electric cars. Sony showed off a prototype of an impressive electric SUV this week. Sony actually first surprised the world by unveiling an electric concept car called the Vision S back in 2020. But at the time, it did not plan on actually selling the car. Now, Sony says it will launch a new company called Sony Mobility to bring them to market. And Chrysler previewed its all-electric mystery vehicle called the Airflow concept. Even the automaker is keeping the kind of car under wraps. The once prominent American automaker said its first electric car will start production in 2025, and by 2028, that's all it will sell. And if you're indecisive about your color at the car lot, BMW has an impressive fix for that. It showcased a car that can change exterior colors with the push of a button, but only if it's not too hot or too cold outside. BMW did not offer a lot of details on how the technology works, though. If you thought house prices were wild in 2021, well, 2022 does not look much tamer. Nationally, home values are expected to surge 14%. At least that's according to the real estate app Zillow. But prices are expected to rise more in some places than others. Think Florida. In Zillow's list of hottest housing markets for 2022, Tampa Bay came in at the top spot and Jacksonville ranked number 2. Raleigh, North Carolina, San Antonio, Texas, and Charlotte, North Carolina round out the top 5. So what's going on in those cities? Well, 6 of the top 10 hottest housing markets have recently added more jobs than homes. So more people are moving in, but there aren't enough houses for them. So the prices are getting higher. That's what Zillow means by hot housing markets, lower inventory, and higher competition. We already knew TikTok is the most popular site on the internet, but now it's coming to televisions too. Soon you could catch the addicting short-form videos while you're out to eat, at the gym, in a hotel, or even at your office. The TikTok channel is being added to the streaming service Atmosphere, which streams just for businesses. That includes places like Taco Bell, Burger King, and Texas Roadhouse. Here's how it'll work. Atmosphere editors will pick out TikTok videos, sometimes adding random videos and other times making compilations. They basically pick what they think works for that business's customers and add their own music and captions. But for now, TikTok creators do not get paid, but they will have to give the okay for their videos to be used. One of music's biggest nights is not happening anytime soon. The Grammy Awards were set for January 31st, but the show is now postponed indefinitely. The reason, of course, the spike in COVID cases around the country. There's no new date set, but Variety's sources say it could be April or May when the show goes on. Variety also reports the Music Academy is hoping for a full audience this year, since the 2021 Grammys were scaled down with some of the performances pre-recorded. In another blow to the entertainment industry, the Sundance Film Festival is going virtual. Organizers were hoping to bring packed premieres back to Park City, Utah, since last year's was also scrapped. But it does note a digital festival can foster hits, since last year showcased big films like Coda and Summer of Soul. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. And today we're talking about how the pandemic could be impacting babies, even if no one in their family actually gets COVID-19. But first, a quick break for our sponsor. It's a new year, which means it's time for new ideas. Turns out that women may be better investors than men. That's right, according to recent research, women investors outperform their male counterparts. So what gives some women investors an edge? The research shows they're more likely to invest in alternative assets, ones that help diversify their portfolios and are less correlated to traditional stocks and bonds. One of those assets is blue-chip contemporary art. And typically, it's only the bajillionaires, think Beyoncé and Bezos, who can afford a chic Picasso for their walls, right? But Masterworks is changing all of that. Masterworks is the startup democratizing the art market, giving everyday investors a piece of the art pie, or palette to be metaphorical. They've made blue-chip art investable, so you can own a fraction of a multi-million-dollar piece of art. That way, anyone can add paintings by artists like Monet, Basquiat, and Banksy to their portfolio without paying millions. And you can join them by going to masterworks.art/newsworthy. Again, that's masterworks.art/newsworthy. See important disclosures at masterworks.io disclaimer. Now back to Thing to Know Thursday. New research says babies might be falling a little behind if they were born in the early days of the pandemic. A study was just published this week by the American Medical Association. For it, researchers followed 255 babies born between March to December of 2020. And they found at 6 months old, those babies scored slightly lower on a developmental screening test than babies born earlier. The test asked about their milestones, like if they could roll from their back to their front or how often they babble. And while social skills and motor skills were lower in these pandemic-era babies, the studies say their communication and problem-solving skills scored a bit higher. The results were the same whether they were born to mothers who had COVID-19 during their pregnancy or not. Researchers say it is possible babies had a harder time developing because their mothers were going through so much stress during their pregnancies. But they also note the study has some limitations because there was a pretty small group of babies included. And they also pointed out these findings don't necessarily mean this generation is going to be impacted later in life. For anyone who is worried, researchers say parents can help their kids' development by interacting with them as much as possible, preferably face-to-face. Well, thank you so much for listening today. We'll be back with much more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.